Barracks are usually a group of long buildings built to house military personnel or laborers. The English word comes via French from an Old Spanish word, barraca, originally referring to temporary shelters or huts for various people and animals. But today barracks are usually permanent buildings for military accommodation. The word may apply to separate housing blocks or to complete complexes. And the plural form often refers to a single structure and may be singular in construction. The main object of barracks is to separate soldiers from the civilian population and reinforce discipline, training, and esprit de corps. They have been called discipline factories for soldiers. Like industrial factories, some are considered to be shoddy or dull buildings, although others are known for their magnificent architecture, such as Collins Barracks in Dublin and others in Paris, Berlin, Madrid, Vienna, or London. From the rough barracks of 19th-century conscript armies, filled with hazing and illness and barely differentiated from the livestock pens that housed the draft animals, to the clean and internet-connected barracks of modern all-volunteer militaries. The word can have a variety of connotations. Early barracks such as those of the Roman Praetorian Guard were built to maintain elite forces. There are a number of remains of Roman army barracks in frontier forts such as Vercovicium and Wunderlande. From these and from contemporary Roman sources we can see that the basics of life in a military camp have remained constant for thousands of years. In the early modern period, they formed part of the military revolution that scholars believe contributed decisively to the formation of the nation-state by increasing the expense of maintaining standing armies. Large, permanent barracks were developed in the 18th century by the two dominant states of the period: France the caserne, and Spain the cuartel. The English term, barrack, on the other hand, derives from the Spanish word for a temporary shelter erected by soldiers on campaign. Barraca. Early barracks were multi-story blocks, often grouped in a quadrangle around a courtyard or parade ground. A good example is Berwick Barracks, which was among the first in England to be purpose-built and begun in 1717 to the design of the distinguished architect Nicholas Hawksmoor. During the 18th century, the increasing sophistication of military life led to separate housing for different ranks and married quarters, as well as the provision of specialized buildings such as dining rooms and cookhouses, bath houses, mess rooms, schools, hospitals, armories, gymnasia, riding schools and stables. The pavilion plan concept of hospital design was influential in barrack planning after the Crimean War. The first large-scale training camps were built in the Kingdom of France and the Germany during the early 18th century. The British Army built Aldershot camps from 1854. By the First World War, infantry, artillery, and cavalry regiments had separate barracks. The first naval barracks were hulks, old wooden sailing vessels, but these insanitary lodgings were replaced with large naval barracks at the major dockyard towns of Europe and the United States, usually with hammocks instead of beds. These were inadequate for the enormous armies mobilized after 1914. Hut camps were developed using variations of the eponymous Nissen hut, made from timber or corrugated iron. In many military forces, both NCO and SNCO personnel will frequently be housed in barracks for service or training. Officers are often charged with ensuring the barracks and personnel are maintained in an orderly fashion. Junior enlisted and sometimes junior NCOs will often receive less space and may be housed in bays, while senior NCOs and officers may share or have their own room. Junior enlisted personnel are typically tasked with the cleanliness of the barracks. The term, garrison town, is a common expression for any town that has military barracks, i.e., a permanent military presence nearby. Barracks were used to house troops in forts during the Upper Canadian period, leading up to and during the War of 1812. Lieutenant Governor John Graves Simcoe and Major General Isaac Brock oversaw the construction of Fort York on the shores of Lake Ontario in present-day Toronto. There are several surviving British Army barracks built between 1814 and 1815 at that site today. Multiple limestone barracks were built half a mile west of Fort York in 1840. Only one of which survives. The British Army handed over New Fort York, as the second fort was called, to the Canadian militia in 1870 after Confederation. The stone frigate, completed in 1820, served as barracks briefly in 1837–38, and was refitted as a dormitory and classrooms to house the Royal Military College of Canada by 1876. The stone frigate is a large stone building originally designed to hold gear and rigging from British warships dismantled to comply with the Rush Bagot T.